Good evening, and welcome to the Greg and Jeff Give the Hi-Hat podcast. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Greg.
And we welcome you.
Sounds like we're doing a documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a very, very subtle, very intro.
I was trying to go for the PBR and PBR.
And next on Nova, we have Exploding Planets.
It's not PBR, though.
No. You think it's NPR?
NPR. The NPR, sponsored by PBR. That's a whole nother. I mean, the PBR network. Today, we're going to be teaching you how to make catfish.
We're going noodling.
Yeah, from noodling to the table.
Oh, it gives the whole new meaning to, from farm to table.
Yeah, and they serve it with noodles. It's a complete circle. It's very Harvard.
I don't know if I would want noodles with my catfish. I don't think I would.
Well, I think it would like if you did it like a stir fry noodles, and then you'd like pan sear chunks of catfish and put it over noodles with maybe a little bit of sauce. That would be good.
Yeah, maybe like a lemon butter.
Yeah,
it's not something you would really want to do like a cream sauce with.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cooking.
I mean, if you think of like the way you have to cook halibut, it's got to be a little bit rough to make sure it cooks through.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had halibut. I'm not really a thin fish.
It's like a big flaky cod type of flaky meat fish.
Yeah.
When you get those, they come in big hunks though. So, if you're like a white flaky fish consumer like I am, then you have it from time to time. I'm big on salmon and tuna steaks. Love both of those on the grill. And it's summertime, and that's typically when I eat them. I'll probably have some this weekend now.
Yeah, I mean, I can get like catfish has to be fried. Number two,
no doubt.
I can do.
And it have to be farm raised. I'm not eating no catfish from the Neuse River or anywhere like that.
Oh God, no. Not unless you want a third eye by the end of the night.
Simpsons reference. I'm just throwing it in there for the millennials listening, which they could be Simpsons fans, but it's like they have their Simpsons, and we're talking about the original Simpsons.
Yes, like when it was funny.
Yeah, seasons. I'll give you seriously funny from 1 through 8, and it stayed relatively funny till about season 15, 16, and then it goes downhill from there.
They just do it out of habit now.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get me started.
Well, what happened is they hooked the animator up to a perpetual engine, and they can't get the damn thing to shut off. So all they have to do is input data, and the shit pops out. So.
And here's the thing: in the last 5 to 10 years or so, especially with the advent of like streaming programming, I don't know how. I mean, Simpsons being basically still on network TV, I don't know how it's even profitable now.
I don't either, but they're still beloved. I mean, people are obsessed with that show, and I mean, I get it to some degree because I'm a fan, and I have a guilty pleasure of every once in a while going on, and because we have Disney, and going on Disney and watching an episode of The Simpsons,
Yeah, but
I'm in a bad mood.
Episodes. They're not new episodes. They're like old episodes, right?
Yeah, it's like every episode ever, on Disney. So I can look at anyone I ever want to watch. So that's pretty cool too. That's almost worth $5 a month in and of itself.
But that's the thing is like you're not tuning in at 8 o'clock on Sunday on Fox to catch the new episodes.
Yeah, I can watch whatever, whenever, exactly. But
But that's what I'm saying. It's like you know, it used to be back in the beginning. It used to be you would put it on your schedule, but now, I mean, I haven't seen a new episode as it came out in years and years and years.
yeah, you know
And
what, Greg, you're gonna love this. One of the things I loved about The Simpsons was the episodes they put out during Halloween.
yes,
Remember the Halloween specials, and one in particularly, you don't put an adverb. I just give up.
spit it out. You got it.
One in particular comes in mind. Episode where the aliens come and invite the Simpsons on board their UFO, and they go out in space, and they're feeding them all this food, fattening them up, and then they come to the assumption that they were going to eat them. Do you remember that episode?
I do. Vaguely,
Mm-hmm.
but I do.
Yeah. The reason I bring that up is I thought it would be a perfect segue into the topic of today's show.
Catfish.
Yes.
Extraterrestrial life forms. And
Well, not
ETs.
exactly. We're going to talk. I think both of us are. Well, let's tell them what it is. The topic of today is UFOs, or as some other people refer to them now, UAPs, which are unidentified aerial phenomenon. That's supposed to be the more scientific language to use.
Is that like a
But
woke
we're going.
thing? Is that a woke?
No, that's what the military call them now. So now the people that supposedly have credibility in the UFO investigative field like to use the same terminology that military uses. So they want to feel like it gives them credit because UFO has such a, you know, moniker to it, being so sensationalized.
Tinfoil
Like the
hat.
New York Post, yeah, and yeah, all that stuff. But I mean, we're here today. I think you and I to talk more. Well, did we say? Yeah, UFOs and the paranormal is what the topic of the show is, and the paranormal. We'll see how it goes if we get into that. But I think that you and I are not the National Enquirer people. You know, we're not the space aliens fighting each other. I actually believe that happens. Kind of people. I mean, if I'm stepping in and overstating myself,
No,
please feel free to step in. What I think is we can talk about this and some pretty interesting things, and say, well, we'll get to what the conclusion is at the conclusion of it. But as logical people, and say, and just talk about some of the things going on.
and the same way is the way I feel. I mean, it would be pretty arrogant to think or to believe that we, human beings on this planet Earth, are the only form of life throughout the whole vast space of the universe. To to think that we're the only living creatures in this whole universe, to me, seems a bit conceited. Actually, it does.
Mm-hmm.
That there, I believe there are other life out in the universe. Um, whether or not they bumped into us or anything like that, I don't know. I mean, they could not. Um, but, it would take eons and eons for us to be able to go out and happen to bump into one of them, per se. Um,
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I mean, if you want to put the short question, do I believe in other forms of life, quote unquote aliens? Yes. I mean, just because of what I stated earlier, is that we
Yeah.
can't be the only ones. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree. And I mean, am I saying definitively there is or there isn't? No. But I mean, I think that the odds are highly more probable, just looking at it from a scientific aspect, that there is, that there isn't. So, my mind is always open to the subject. And, what life is to us, it could be something completely different elsewhere. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a humanoid.
No.
It could be microorganisms that are just highly evolved, you know, consciously, because consciousness is what's, and the develop of that consciousness is what develops any kind of organism.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't even have to be that advanced. I mean, they could be microorganisms on other planets in this universe that are not quote unquote humanoid or anything that we have ever seen. I mean, it could be just a vast wasteland of the planet with a bunch of amoeba, microscopic amoeba on it, and that is life.
Exactly. There's not like it's kind of like a haywire theory that there was an asteroid that ricocheted off of Mars and then impacted Earth, and it was a combination of those materials that formed the first microorganisms on Earth where man came from. Interesting theory. I don't want to get into that too much, but I mean, it almost becomes like a philosophical discussion more than a scientific one, because what it all comes down to is not where does life comes from. I think we've got a pretty good idea, of where life comes from. It's just, you know, in my idea of creationism, is there some force out there, or could God just simply be the force that put all these elements in place to evolve it the way they did? And I mean, I think that's an interesting way to look at it.
Or
You know
even
what I
if,
mean?
even if there is, and I'm not saying one way or the other, then the flip side of the argument is there actually a God, quote unquote, that set all this in motion, a spirit, so to speak, or is this just pure science that hey, this asteroid knocked into this asteroid or crashed into this, or these elements, this hydrogen atom just happened to form with this, oxygen atom and make water, and is it all by some grand design, or is it
Hmm.
just purely chance?
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing to me is that creationism and science both say that there was a void, there was nothing, there was a great nothingness, and something happened, and all of a sudden there was a bunch of shit. I mean, that's the basic
Yeah,
state. One's got one way of how we got there, one's got another way. And my point, from all the way from the beginning, from the scientific standpoint, okay, what caused that? The Big Bang.
right.
Something had to have happened. Who's to say that the force that caused that? I mean, even in the Bible, when they talk about it, it says that God is something that we can't even imagine or fathom. It's impossible for our brains to conceive. And so, I mean, we're the ones that created this vision of, the old man sitting on a cloud, and,
Yeah,
a vast majority of, not to knock on people, because, I would still consider myself a Christian, although, only in theory, so to speak. I don't know
mm,
how else to say it, but I'm not a big church guy at the moment. But I guess the point I'm trying to say is that there's an argument for both sides, and I'm open to both sides.
And it just and it, so far as like, depending on, I guess, your belief system. I mean, in order, because faith isn't, to me, isn't just relegated to religion. Faith, is something that hopefully, after much contemplation and much research and much, you say, okay, from what I can gather and this, that, and the other in my research, I believe that A, B, and then C happened. And so far as, if you're, once you hit that point, then your faith is either here or there.
Hmm.
Whether it's with creationism or with science, because science has, there is a faith in science. I mean, people believe that
That's a true statement.
that the Big Bang is how it all started, or that
Yeah,
the meteor killed the dinosaurs, and
I know this
or
is
even the
like,
fact that there were dinosaurs. Let's put it that
yeah.
way.
Well, here's the thing, a couple points to bring up here, and this is kind of like a cliche point, that people bring up all the time. But in the 18th century, the science of the time that everyone had faith in is that if you had some kind of blood disease, that you cut your veins and let all the bad blood out. Bloodletting. I mean, that was the science of the day, and that was what the doctors did. You know, so that's one point, that what we have faith in science is one thing, just as much as faith in some religious belief or some other spiritual belief, because there's so much out there, you know and I think it's all intertwined anyway, but that's neither here nor there. But getting back to the point of UFOs, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about that was like really interesting that happened, I believe it was around 2019. I'm not gonna, pound you with facts on this, but there was an incident happened where some U.S. fighter jets intercepted a UAP or UFO. It was a tic tac shaped object that was about, say, 20 feet off of the water in the ocean, off of the Pacific Ocean, I believe, in U.S. territory. And so they were tracking this thing, intercepting, and trying to find out what it was. And they had it locked on the radar, and had, it was just this, you know, giant tic tac about the size of a Volkswagen, had no propulsion system that they can detect whatsoever, and that it was making like turns and changing directions, and reaching speeds, on a snap of a finger, that the forces would kill a human being if they were inside the object. It was so severe. It's just nothing within the realm of man creation. And so the Pentagon actually, after a couple of years, because of this incident, and so many people were talking about it and had actually witnessed it and stuff, it was already out there being leaked. So they had to admit that, yep, we did encounter this. We have no idea what it is. There's stuff like this happening a lot, and we just don't really have an explanation for it. We're investigating it. So I mean, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, that's the U.S. government after all this time, and I don't think that you would disagree with me that a lot of stuff over the years have been covered up and whatnot. But they finally admit. I mean, and it's kind of a crazy thing. I mean, especially for the like real believers. The U.S. government admitting that there's shit flying around in the air and we're intercepting it. We can't keep up with it, and we don't know what it is. That's a big deal.
That is a huge deal. I mean, and it's, quite frankly, I mean, I mean, you could be a conspiracy theorist and say this is all made up. And there again, where there's that word faith again. All right,
Mhm.
the source of the information, or the source of uh, the witnesses in this particular case. All right, they're the most, especially the pilots that were there and intercepted it. They're probably the most trusted sources you could ever find. So, as far as like a rank and file military person, not the brass, but just the rank and file. And, all right. So the government says now that they haven't, they intercepted this thing and they don't know what it is and they're investigating it, but we have no idea. So, okay. So do you, and in things like this, where there are, sightings or anything like that, this maybe sounds a little bit cynical. I always boil it down to ask yourself three questions. Are they right? Are they wrong? Or are they crazy? And so, depending on the source, I mean, sure, okay. And again, there again, I mean, of course, there's other life forces and probably have technology of their own and
Mhm.
with the means to travel vast distances to distant planets. Um,
Well, here's the thing. I mean, what excites me about this topic is like there's so many theories about what this is, and what's happening and what's been happening. And now there's so many people that have cameras on their phones and stuff, everything's getting caught. And,
yeah.
the cameras are so much better and everything. So, a lot of people, are we really seeing that more, or just more people like catching stuff on film that we've ever, had before? And then there's people hoaxing still. So you've got all that thrown in there. But I mean, it doesn't necessarily, in my mind, have to be, an advanced alien technology that's, perfected, space travel and is specifically coming to Earth. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You know, from these tic tacs and things like that. I mean, they're so small. You know, I mean, is there really anything in there? My theory is a lot of this is like, maybe there is an advanced society and they're sending out probes, you know, and that's all they can do. They can't get here themselves, maybe, but they're sending out probes and different things just to like monitor or keep an eye on us or whatever it is.
Well, we do
I
this.
don't know.
We've done the same thing, and we continue to do the same thing. Dating all the way back to the '70s with
Hmm.
the Voyager missions and things like that. So, you know, I that that's a very plausible explanation for what this thing that was witnessed and intercepted was. I mean, compared to what we send out, it makes the Voyager missions look like steampunk,
Yeah.
and and so no, I mean that's a
I mean,
very,
yeah. I
I
mean, we.
find it very plausible that it may not be any type of life form on these particular craft, and it could be just probes. It could be just
Mhm.
just seeing, hey, we found this place and we're checking it out.
Well, I mean, we actually have like private entrepreneurs now that have developed airplanes essentially that take off from an airport and then fly into space, or at least into the stratosphere. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then Musk, that's a private enterprise too. I think it's SpaceNet is what his is, and what they're doing. I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, private enterprises running the United States space exploration with NASA. That's pretty cool. Uh,
And long overdue. I mean,
hmm
just not to harp on that too much, but NASA, quite frankly, we as a society had gotten to a point, especially after the moon missions. where
Hmm.
I said, okay, we're bored with this now. For the majority of our society and the world, basically after the moon mission, it's like, okay, all right, that was nice, but we're bored. And so,
I,
the interest in space travel, which I think should
I
be
think it. I
further.
think my theory is that they intentionally made it boring to disengage the society's interest in it based on what they found or what they had witnessed. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but why wouldn't, I mean, if you want more government funding, or if you want private enterprise to really get on board,
Well, it
don't you
became a
kind of
black
don't you
ops.
don't you
It
don't you
had better funding. It had the black ops funding. So it had all the funding it needed because it was considered the greatest threat to national security. But, and there's other things too, like those stupid balls that were floating over America when America, the
America?
United States a few months ago. I don't know if you remember that or not. And like one flew all the way from like the state of Washington, and it flew all the way across the entire continental U.S. And then right as it got off the coast of North Carolina, they shot it down. And then another one was up around Michigan, they shot down. And the pilots were up there, did you hear about this?
You're not. No, I have not. Because I'm
Yeah,
wondering, are you
there was
confusing the
like,
weather?
and
I hope you're not confusing the Chinese weather balloon.
yeah, the weather balloons.
Oh, okay. Well, those weren't. Are, are you
Well,
saying those?
I'm just saying, there's a lot because ever since that's happened, I just noticed certain things, and I'll actually happen to live about 15, 20 miles from an Air Force base, and my house just happens to fit over, the normal fly patterns of their test flights and stuff. Somewhere around or nearabouts my neighborhood, that's where they turn around and go back home, essentially in a circle. So, ever since the thing with the quote unquote Chinese weather balloons, um, I hear all this chatter or a lot about a lot of phenomenon being seen in the lower, I don't know what you call it, the lower altitudes, and that they were beefing up patrols, at lower altitudes with fighter jets, and then all of a sudden they stopped talking about that. But I want to let you know that I've witnessed it here at my house, ongoing still to this day. I noticed it in California when I was in Los Angeles. That there are fighter jets with the wingman, two jets, and I mean that's surveillance. I mean that's seek and destroy type of like a maneuver, flowing at unusually high altitudes, just doing surveillance flights. And it's somewhat lessened a little bit now, but I mean it was a big deal. And so I mean whatever we heard, eventually the story of what those are on the news. Now, personally, I do believe it was China testing a delivery system. That's what I think it was. I think that was China testing a delivery system for a what do you call those things? The EMP attacks, electromagnetic pulses,
Oh, that.
because they're discharged from high altitude. So
Yeah.
they were testing the weather patterns and how they fly over to see how we react to it and how quickly we react to it. You know,
Apparently not
I
that
mean,
fast.
I'm just saying, if you look at Asian history, I mean, Japan kept testing the waters too. So that's a discussion for another time. But I'm just saying that, there's a lot out there that we see and mistake for something otherworldly that certainly it's technology that some type of government has put together that we're just not familiar with yet. You know what I'm saying? There's
Yeah,
a lot of that.
and that's the and so far as like sightings and encounters. I would again consider the source. If the if our military or Air Force says that they encountered whatever, I'm more apt to believe that than I am Joe Blow in his backyard with his cell phone who happened to catch a shining orb of light hovering treetop level. Just, I mean, essentially just because a lot of that stuff can be either rightly or whether
Hmm.
it's weather, whether it's meteorite, or whether you know the the moonlight hits something just perfect and an optical illusion, maybe I don't know, but that doesn't. I mean, I do believe that there's probably some otherworldly craft that has visited. I'm sure there has.
Hmm.
I mean, I can't really say that I've seen one, but going by reports from the military, I'm more apt to believe that than I am, some Joe who happened to be in his backyard and saw something.
Yeah. Michelle saw something right off of our back porch about 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, she's not a wackadoo about UFOs or anything either. And, it's been, 20 years or more. But, I've seen it, had a couple of incidents. So I've seen some things that I can't explain, like lights in the sky that just like move and then just dart away at like fantastic speeds that you just can't explain. I
And
mean, I personally witnessed that. So,
now I'm going to interject. Just because I'm more apt to believe one source than another doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen. I'm just
hmm.
It's just because to the people, let's just say Michelle, or to people who saw what they saw, they'll look you in the eye and go, "I saw what I saw. I know what I
Hmm.
saw," and it wasn't anything that I could rationally explain away. And it's not to totally poo-poo on it, because there again, there's that belief. It's like my eyes say that I saw this, and it stuck around long enough for me to say no. It's not any something that happens in nature. So I know what I saw, and I saw what I saw, and I think I saw this or that.
Yeah. 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 I want to bring this up because I think you'll find this interesting because there's a guy um, who's like world famous now in the UFO community. His name is Bob Lazar. And he had kept quiet for decades and recently just started, going public with things that he's been involved with in the past. He's a scientist with the U.S. government, and he just thinks it's time that people know and need to get to be prepared. That they're coming and they're coming at a more faster rate is basically what he's saying, and why he's spilling the beans now. Well, essentially, he was a scientist, and he worked for, I forgot the name of the company, but they were a subcontractor that worked with you know. U.S. government and weapons development. And so after about working there for a year, they said, "Hey, Bob, we think you're cool. We got to put you through another grade of security clearance, blah, blah, blah. But we really want you to start working on another project." They said it's really odd hours. You'll like go out there and you'll work and have to stay on the base for like a month at a time. And then you might be off for a month or two, and then you'll come back and work for a couple of weeks, and then it'll be that kind of a schedule. He says, but you always need to be available at the drop of a hat. And so where it was at Area 51. It wasn't actually at Area 51, but it was like a subset, but it was the same base essentially. But he said while there that underground they had in storage 9 recovered crashed alien aircraft and they were working on reverse engineering programs. And he's gone in great detail and talk about like the history of it. You know, that they'll work on this one specific technology they want to figure out on the thing, and if the material development hadn't come through, if we don't have the materials to replicate it at the time, they'll just like shelve it for like 10 years and then come back and, 10 years later and say, hey, do we have something maybe that might make this work now? And
Yeah.
then they have other companies like specifically trying to make materials and things that you're seeing or replicate it. You know what I'm saying? So,
hmm
I mean, it's some pretty interesting stuff, but if anybody is interested in that, I don't want to get into too much detail here because we could go on and on. But the U.S. government has tried to discredit this guy, and I mean, and he's legit. I mean, he's got all the credentials and everything to back up that he was there and he worked on this project and that he worked where he say he worked. And the more that they try to say that he didn't, and discredit him, the more obvious is they're trying to like cover up what he's saying. So again, I'm not saying 100% I believe this guy. I think it's 50-50 probably, but that's pretty astounding in and of itself that it could be it's 50% chance this guy's like completely legit, you know what I mean? Or at least partially legit anyway. But if you're out there on the YouTube or any of the social media, there's a couple of guys that really do credible work. I mean, these guys are not whack jobs at all. They work with MUFON, which is, this group that does scientific investigations of sightings to, rule out the hoaxers and whatnot and just focus on legitimate, unexplained things. But these guys have been really big voices in this topic. There's one guy's name is Jeremy Corbell, and that's Corbell. He's got a podcast with another legendary guy in the field by the name of George Knapp. But Corbell is where you're going to find all the material. This guy was actually also involved with the U.S. military in the past, and he had high security clearance and worked with special ops and actually worked in national security investigating UFOs and things, and got out of it to start spreading the word about what was being kept from people. So there's also I'm not even going to mention his name. He's gotten too sensational now. Never mind. He got on Discovery Channel and he got ruined, but he was good prior to that. And but, interesting stuff. And I just want to say, if it's something that interests you guys, I mean, we could talk all night, but those are some places and some guys you can look up if you want to keep investigating the topic, looking into it. That's where you will get most of your credible stuff that's out there.
Now I have a real quick question. So far as like these individuals that you've named, what
Hmm.
what do they say their main reason or motivation is for coming public, either in the past or now? Um, is it to warn us? Is it to educate us? Is it to enlighten us? Or what? Now, apparently, you've done your research on these individuals.
Hmm.
Now, either from what they've said directly or from your take, why are they coming forward to tell the tale, as it were?
I think the biggest thing is that the frequency and of sightings and the more and more credible that they're getting, and what the U.S. government had done in the past is just like discredit, or to like sensationalize or make a joke out of it, whatever it was, however legitimate it was, the event, whether it was Roswell or, anything. Um, so I think the thing of it is now is that it is somewhat of a warning, because the biggest thing, from what I understand, that world governments um, is mass hysteria, you know, finding out that there are alien beings out there. is the world collapse, societal collapse, because so many people still believe that there is a God, and they think, well, it's neither here nor there. You can talk about that all night too, but the point being, I forgot what the point is now. But
I think you were getting at it's more of a warning than anything else. And I also want to just kind of ask, it's like, all right,
well,
is
I
it a
think it. Well, I think it's also them saying like, look, guys, those of you who really follow this and are like being told that you're stupid. No, you're not stupid. This stuff is going on, and we're not saying it's alien, but we do know that it is going on, and these things are being seen, and the government is concerned about it. And if they're concerned about it, we think that you need to be concerned about it too. That's basically what their message is.
okay? Do you think maybe, and that's it's like, unfortunately, I have not done nearly any. It's not really high on my radar
Yeah.
day basis, but just from hearing what you had to say about it, do you think there maybe is a healthy fear that, particularly with this government, are they fearful that they're trying to weaponize anything that they have found?
Well, I think the biggest fear, honestly, of the United States and China is like the idea that they're not the big dogs in the fight anymore. That 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 someone had basically. I think America's big deal with this is like these guys have the capability to whip our ass. You know what I'm saying? I think
Right.
that's our country's biggest fear. Personally, that's my personal opinion,
Right.
and that kind of pissed off. Is like we got to catch up. It's just like that's all they've ever done, and it's worked. They're still here and they're still thriving. So I mean, and plus it's the industrial war complex. They're gonna create fear. You know, and they're gonna be pushing to you know weaponize whatever technology is out there. So I don't know. I think that like maybe the uptick in activity, and I'm just saying again, I'm not saying wholeheartedly this is what I believe. I'm just saying the possibility is there. And the alternative is like, if that's not what it is, then that's even more scary. Then what the hell is it? Because it's legitimately going on. And it's always been a topic that's been interesting to me because I've always been fascinated with space and Star Wars and all that stuff too. But that's irrelevant. What just the idea and the concept of like how it crosses over so many boundaries of like religion, astrophysics. I mean, because time travel could be involved with this. I mean, even Einstein proved that time travel, or at least interdimensional travel, was theoretically possible.
Yeah.
And our science agrees with it, even though we haven't been able to replicate it, or have we? You know, so I mean, who knows? I mean, there could be another dimension that exists, interlayered with ours that we don't even see. And there's beings or whatever crossing in and out from that. I mean, just, yeah. And I'm not stealing from um, the Avengers or anything like that either. I mean, it's a theory that's out there.
Do you
So,
think you think maybe it's an intersection between imagination and science? It's one of those things that, what if you could do this, or imagination says, hey, you know, what if there is this technology on another planet with life form, and is there science to back it up, or is there science to actually make that imagination possible?
hmm
I don't know if that just confused you, or
no, I
the
understand what
imagine
you're
like the
saying
parallel
because,
universe, the time travel. It's one of those things. It's like you could be sitting there and say, you know what? What if we could do this? And by saying this is something that no mortal man or woman has ever physically or mentally accomplished. And then when we say, you know what, could we do this? And if that answer is yes, then how can we apply what we know scientifically to that to make it happen?
Hmm.
I don't know if that made any sense, but it did to me.
No, it does. It makes perfect sense to me, and it ties into like a point that I was making here, which this topic is, so interesting to me. If you're open minded about it, I mean, it's really tough if you're like lean heavy and believe one way or another to things. And I've always been open minded about everything. I mean, even reading the Bible as a child, I mean, I knew that the Bible was a metaphor, and I've always looked at it that way. I've never been a Bible literalist, in anything, even as from a child, I just didn't, I was like, no. But, if you're open minded about it, I mean, you think about philosophy, you think about religion, you think about all the elementals out there, the astrophysics, the psychics, and the spiritualists is what I was trying to say. My apologies. But in particularly like the elementals, like the people that like worship the earth and the earth energy, to work with crystals and things like that, that there was power and energy and everything that you can draw you know from a positive nature and draw the positive energies for things and push out the negatives to places where they need to go, like water to wash it away and things like that. So, I mean, the idea that like any one of these things is right is crazy to me because all of them have a pretty good message and it's about the betterment of themselves as a human being. And it's like maybe if we're all a little bit more open minded about the idea that all these things are probably intermingled in some degree. I'm talking about every religion, every scientific theory, every spiritualist idea about energies and stuff. It's probably all intertwined, at least in my mind. And I'm okay with that
Yeah.
because in my mind, it takes the question out of everything. You know what I mean?
Well,
Any doubt you would
either
have
that
is
or
your.
oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, the easy example would be, you know, as a Christian, having the open mindedness to think that of these other things may be involved too. It takes all the doubt away because there's your explanation for any doubt you had as a Christian. You understand what I'm saying? And even as a scientist, there could be doubts. I know this is it, but I can't put this theory into reality. So maybe this isn't true science. They'll have their doubts too. And
But
then, if
as
you,
opposed to taking the question out of everything, do you think maybe it's actually putting the question into everything? Because there is,
sure.
because we as human beings, we love three things: speed, ease, and comfort, and the finality of an answer. You know, um,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I've always. I mean, people say I have a creative mind, and I'm not like being braggadocious about it or conceited about it, but I guess I do because the last thing I hate to do when I like get still and sitting around and it's like just be sitting there and thinking, "Whoa, when's the electric bill due?" Whoop.
yeah,
My mind when I'm off, not working or whatever, and I have free time, my mind is all over the place, thinking about things and how things go together and work and people's relationship. I mean, I'm just
yeah.
all over the place, with and I guess is that odd? I mean, I
No,
don't think of
well,
anything mundane if I don't have to, is what I'm saying.
right, and quite frankly, I think every human, if not distracted, as long as you're not distracted, every human being, I believe, their mind will wander and imagine and worry and fret and ponder and philosophize. But as long as we're distracted, then it takes our mind away from what could be, to what's in front of our face, or right, quite frankly, even as we talk today, what's in my hand, because I'm talking, doing my side through an iPhone. And so, but if just left to my own devices, if I wasn't doing that, then I could either be, my mind will go just like yours, a million different places and a million different thoughts to a million different people. Or quite frankly, if I'm just sitting and I'll just laser focus on if I see a bird, or if I see a groundhog, or just watch, and nothing else matters around me, and I just watch that. And nature in and of itself, that's its own distraction.
Yeah.
Boy,
yeah.
it sounds like I just did like a handful of shrooms right then.
No, you're completely right, because that's my ultimate escape. And I'm not a big exercise guy, but I'm a hiker, and I will hike, and I don't go crazy, but I mean, I'll hike 10 miles in a day. I've done that plenty of times, but the reason I do it, and I go to a lot of the same places nearby my house over and over again, because it's the one place I can go. I can turn my phone off, and I can walk this trail and be surrounded by nothing but nature and beauty and my own thoughts, and not any text messages or phone calls or emails. And for 2 or 3 hours, I'm just in that tranquility. I mean, people talk about meditation and how important it is to them, and like just for your mental health. And I mean, for me, that's it. That's my meditation on when I hike, because usually nobody wants to go with me, and that's perfectly fine with me, because
Exactly.
that's when I'm alone. It's just my meditation.
Yeah.
And when I do it, I might be dog tired, but I'm a completely different human being for a week. You know what I mean?
Hmm. No, I totally dig it, and that I get like that. I wouldn't necessarily say hikes. I'd go for a walk.
Yeah.
Hike. Hike to me sounds like too much work. Because you got to do this trail, and you got to hike up this thing and hike down this thing.
I'm just trying to glamorize it, really.
Yeah, I just like to take a walk. When you take a walk, it's you don't have anywhere you need to be, and you just
Old men take walks. Oh, I go at my own pace. I go at my own pace. I go at my own pace. Yeah, I definitely walk the old man's pace, and I take time to like stop and take things in as I go. So I mean, I'm just meandering around the trails. I'm not like trogging it or anything. Well, we're getting off topic here again.
well,
But look,
we kind of did, but it kind of
it does all fit together.
it does in a way kind of meanders back around to belief.
Yeah,
And
we were talking about metaphysics
and
at the end.
metaphysics, and what it is that your belief system? Is that your faith? Is it something is it something
I think
spiritual
it's
even?
all intertwined.
Yeah, and I don't think it's intertwined completely. I think
Yeah, that's not what I'm
there's
saying.
like edges
Yeah,
that are intertwined. I think there are some
exactly.
things that both sides can say, okay, well, we can't explain this, but this is
But nobody has the whole puzzle, and nobody has enough of the piece of the puzzles to connect everybody's pieces together. But a lot of people have a lot of the good parts of the puzzle. That's the way I look at it.
it's a work in progress.
Yeah, exactly.
We might before the sun explodes.
Well, I don't know. With the stem cells, we'll be around forever. Well, look, man, I thought this was a really good show, and I didn't
think
know
so
that
too.
you would be into it as much. But I don't know if it's next week. Probably not, because we like to be a variety show and not a specific topic show. But I would like to do a show on the paranormal, because there's some things on that topic that I don't know if you know about me and Michelle, but we'll get into that. I'm just setting it up. We'll do it a few
Okay.
weeks out.
All
We'll
right.
come back to the paranormal, because if you were digging on this topic, I think you'd really dig on that, and you'd have a lot of questions and stuff. But it's cool. We'll get to that to another time. But I thought it was a great episode, and I appreciate you, man.
Hey, no, I admit, always a pleasure.
Yep.
Always a pleasure.
And look, if I know this is a sensitive topic, and and if we hurt anyone's feelings in this, yeah, I completely understand. And I want you to know that we were speaking about this from a logical, open-minded idea kind of way. So please don't take offense. If you've got any comments, please leave them. We'll answer them probably. Well, Greg will answer them. Give us a like if you like the podcast. Share it with a friend. That's how me and Greg met 40 years ago on a podcast.
On a
Somebody shared
podcast.
it.
Wait a minute. They had
He
podcasts.
shared it. Yeah. Well, maybe that's not exactly how it went down, but I think there was a stop sign involved. But nonetheless, that's another show too.
Yikes.
Yeah. But I think that's it.
That's it.
Until next week, my brother.
My brother from another mother.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.